So today, I just had some thoughts I wanted to get out. So I went on YouTube and I followed Sneak on YouTube. I watched some of his stuff on Rumble a while ago, and he came back on YouTube, so I've been watching some of his more cinematic videos. So I pulled up on to his channel, and I saw he was doing a stream collab with Will Vicky. I was like, oh, he's done stream collabs with like Lil Pump and random celebrities, Ty Dolla Sign. So I was like, okay, cool, Will Vicky. I searched up Will Vicky ethnicity. Just because she looked a little mixed, a little this, a little that. She was a little tan, but she also looked white. I think I remember vaguely her getting into some controversy a while back for acting black and doing a tan on herself. So I went on Reddit and I searched up Will Vicky ethnicity, and I searched up Will Vicky ethnicity, and I clicked the first Reddit post I saw, just because Reddit always has interesting comments. And then after scrolling down for a while, I saw some people being very critical of her acting black in the past. She's actually acted black, and then she's Christian now, but then she's also making fun of the Diddy situation, and then this and this and that. Some people don't really condone her behavior to this day. But I scrolled down and I saw someone say, the whole the white girls acting black thing makes me sick. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe go into this whole spiel, but the entire base of it is like, to what extent can we blame white girls for acting black? Right? Like, first off, what is acting black, right? Because, for better or for worse, in good ways and bad ways, black culture has become pop culture. Whether it be black voices being featured or included into higher places with directors like Ryan Coogler and Jordan Peele and all these black actors that they elevate in their works, to like black culture being assimilated and like taken and used for trends like suddenly sagging is like fashionable. Like there's these pants that have like the pattern of underwear, and then the pattern of regular pants like jeans, almost like sagging without sagging. And I thought that was pretty interesting. That was like an example of black culture being assimilated. All right, but I thought the whole white people acting black thing boiled down to a couple points. One, black culture being pop culture for better or worse, and two, a lack of a unified white identity. But I think it's pretty interesting. It's kind of Fuentes like. The whole unified white identity feels a bit Fuentes like, you know. But because I think he's talked about it before, but I think it's pretty interesting. As to what extent can you blame a white person for acting black if they grow up around black people? Like they're just not supposed to. Like what is acting white? Because a lot of the things we may associate with white girls, like pumpkin spice lattes, UGG boots, like Stanley cups, Labubus, what's it called, like affluency and access to these resources. A lot of these things, some white people just don't have access to. Like, what about the white person that grows up in an all-black neighborhood in Harlem? Or what about the poor white people, like the Theo Vaughns of the world? Like Theo Vaughn sort of made a name for himself because he's grown up around so many different people. He's grown up around poor Mexicans. He's grown up around poor black people, and he's brought up the fact that when you're poor, everybody's poor. Poor white, poor black, we're all just poor. Whether you're on the black side of town or the white side of town. And being poor or white oftentimes means that you're around a bunch of poor black people, a bunch of hood black people, and so you get to see the stereotypical, like archetypal hood black person and sort of what their life is like. But you're also around that all the time. It's like nature versus nurture. Like, what really differentiates a white person from a black person, nature wise? And once you think about that, you realize there's not much that differentiates all humans, and most of it is nurture. Most of it is what you're born into. So, is a white person born into? Well, this is an interesting idea. Is a white person born into poverty and into the hood more embody the black experience more than a white person born into, let's say, Bel Air? Because I think this has been explored in various TV shows where being a black man still means that you have the black skin color, and wherever you are, there's bound to be prejudice against you in some form. But then it's like the archetypal black, experience, like the black hood experience, the experience that, for better or for worse, has been sort of characterized the black experience in America, like can be better related to by a white person who's grown up in poverty. So it's interesting. A lot of interesting ideas, but it made me think, like, what is the white identity? What do white people have to unify? Because, like, what is a white person? Why some people might say white, okay, white Caucasian. Caucasian means from the Caucasus Mountains. That was like a phrenology term that they created to characterize people from the Caucasus Mountains. But what if you're not from there? What if you're Greek or Italian? That was like back then. White people looked down upon other groups of people we would consider white, like Irish people or Italians or Greeks, because they came from different parts of the world. And then it was only in America where this whole unified white identity of, you know, so and so being a thing, and so and so, being white because of their skin color became a real thing. So it's interesting. It's interesting because I've thought about it so much, like this unified identity of race. Like, is it helping us or is it destroying us? Because I think at some degree, being white, like a white person doesn't describe people enough. Like, what if you're Greek? Like, a Greek person and an Italian person aren't both white. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're different ethnicities, different cultures, different histories. Sometimes you have people who are from similar places, like someone who's from Ukraine, someone who's from Russia. They may, look similar, act similar, but they have a very storied history and a very, conflict-ridden history. So it's like, is it fair to call them both white? To some extent, race has become something that can unify various groups of people, but in unification, we also sort of lose the intricacies between different cultures. And, you know, it's interesting. Like, mm. Honestly, saying all this, I still haven't really figured out what would you characterize people as, because I feel like if you characterize people by ethnicities, it's still like fractured. Maybe smaller racial groups, but as a Christian, right? I've grown up singing the song. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world, no matter what color you are. We're all just children of God. And so, as a Christian, I try not to have any prejudice against people. I mean, first off, it doesn't make any sense to me whether white or black, right? But Jesus Himself, God and Jesus, they love people of all cultures, of all creeds, of all skin tones. Jesus made a point to hang out, even though he was criticized for hanging out with beggars and harlots and people like that and drunkards. He embraced the scum of the world because he knew that deep down we were all just children of God. So I think that we just need to strip away. I think that's what we really need to unify us, and maybe that's why Christianity is being so undermined in America, is that it goes against the race-centric ideals that we've been taught. Like, you're white, you're black, so you did this to me. Where's my reparations? And it's like, oh, I was having a conversation with my dad, and he brought up very interesting points. The more I talk about him, the more I realize we agree with. But I just dislike Black Americans, like, emphasis on the white man. Like, the white man did this and the white man did that. There are intricacies and systems in place that keep down black people. Especially in a country built upon black labor and black slavery, black oppression, and the appropriation of black culture. We've been exploited and hoed out and pimped down for generations and generations, especially those people who may not have a close connection to the roots like I do. I mean, I don't even know where all my family's from, but I know that most of them are from the Caribbean. They're from, Guyana. Some of them moved to Jamaica or various other places. And so, yeah, that's interesting. That is to say that as much as there is a very storied history, and the average black person may not be able to connect with the roots as deeply as I do, or I can have the capacity to, I think it's still sort of stupid how much people emphasize what the white man has done. It feels like a crutch that we can always fall back on. Then it's like, What is a white person? And then what have you done despite that? You know, I've learned the history of black people who have made success after slavery, like right after slavery. You know, the slaves that were freed right after slavery were pretty successful in terms of creating their own little communities that were very profitable, right? There was, I can't remember the name of it, Black Wall Street. But there were a couple of those. There were a couple of those in various places. You know, Black Wall Street, as we know, was probably one of the biggest and most influential. But there were various, cases where, like, look at old black wealth in America. Like, there are black people right now whose ancestors established communities, bought land, and built up their wealth and passed it down through generations and generations. That's the real black success story, but we don't get to see that too much because the black man has been exploited in America for so long in so many different ways and then taught to lean on that exploitation as a crutch. And it's so unfortunate. You know, it's so unfortunate. It's so weird too. Because then you look at all these black movements, and it's like, okay, what's the positivity coming out of it? Like social change is great and amazing. Then what about the black person? Like the way my dad explained it is, he came to this country when he was younger, and he built the foundation for his family. Even as the youngest, the more I talk to him, the more I'm sort of proud and look up to him even more for what he's done. He was my age when he came to this country with his parents, and he was the youngest. He was the only one that could come because he was 18, and he ended up laying the foundation for his family. An amazing story, an amazing man, someone I look up to. But something he told me recently was, even after he was like, okay, yeah, I don't really like the way that black people sort of lean on the white man, the white man. That is that he had to, like, immigrants have a different mentality than people born in America. People born in America are sort of subject to this mentality of slavery, and slavery did this and slavery did that. And in some ways, it still presses us to this day because it's like, oh, I'm blaming slavery for everything. But immigrants have this idea where it's like, okay, if I have to work 3 times as hard as you to get what I get, then that's what I'll have to do. Black people, I think, how should I say this? Are focused on changing a system that won't, like, changing a system and reaping the benefits at the same time. I feel like we're super focused on the idea of changing a system so that we benefit and not so that our children could benefit. Like, we want to see the change we want to see in our lifetime, and maybe that's possible. I'm not saying it's not, and I'd love to see it. But immigrants are more like, yo, this is a system built like this and this and this, and I may not like it, but I'm in it. So instead of working on changing the system, right, which will take years and years and decades of my life, and I probably won't even see the rewards, or maybe my children won't, I can hunker down and work 3 times as hard. Do the work necessary to build my legacy in a system that doesn't want me to. And in some ways that's good, in some ways that's bad, in some ways that's complacent, but in some ways that's super strong and admirable because it's like, okay, I may have been dealt these hands, but I can still play the game. May have been dealt bad cards in Uno, but I could still win if I play my cards right. Maybe that's what the immigrant struggle is about. So many different ideas, like, what is the white identity? Who's white? And can you blame white people who've grown up in environments, or even like Asian people, like token, black acting Asians, people who emulate black culture, like, for such a homogenous place, we're so rigid with what people can do and how people can interact with culture. It's very interesting, especially in a place like New York, where we can acknowledge, like, go down this block, there's the Jewish section, go down this block, there's the Chinese section, where you got black kids going to school with Jewish kids, going to with Chinese kids, going to school with Filipinos, going to school with Dominicans, going to school with Trinidadians, going to school with Jamaicans, going to school with Guyanese people, with Panamanians, with Argentinians, with Brazilians, with, I don't know, Bajans, people from the DR, people from Brazil, people from all these different places. Such a homogenous place where different cultures can mix together. So I think it's weird to acknowledge that without acknowledging the fact that there's going to be some cultural overlap. There's going to be there's so many Blasians, the Janae Eikos, I don't know if John Legend's Blasian, but like the Suki babies, the I don't know, I can't really think about too many more. Oh well, I can't remember her name. I know she was with Corday. She's a tennis player. The Naomi Osakas of the world. think there's like a NBA player who's like 6 something. He's Blasian as well. And so we have all these, black Latina mixes, these black Asian mixes, these, Hispanic Asian mixes, and it's like if you acknowledge that, people are like that, then you're also acknowledging the way that cultures converge. And if you acknowledge that, then I think it's inevitable that there's going to be white people who act black, white people who live a more authentic hood black experience than you may do. So as a middle class black person, can you look at a white person and say, don't act the way that the people around you act? And I think that's a testament to nature versus nurture, that we have so much more in common. That's really the main idea here. We have so much more in common than we're willing to admit. You know, that the real reason that black people can act the way they do or act the way they do, or the reasons black behavior is considered stereotypical black behavior is because um, of the environment that we've been raised in, of the way the government has negatively impacted the black man and the black experience throughout history. And if we acknowledge that, core idea, then we can see, we can sort of empathize or understand the perspective of a white person who's grown up in the environment. And we can also unite as a people, devoid of racial classifications, and just, we're all people under God. People who look up to God, who are subservient to the will of the Creator. And I think that's very interesting, that in showing how white people, like a 1900 Rugrat, he's probably lived a more hood experience, or, stereotypically, black experience than I have, in terms of the struggles he's had to go through. But does that make him blacker than me? No. But does that mean he's acting black? Because, like even the traits we associate with being black are kind of problematic. That's another story. I've been trying to tiptoe around it a little bit by saying hood black, but even that just feels a little weird. So yeah, very interesting.